Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Thank you for your time as always. If you're new to the channel and you could subscribe, that'd be a massive help. We're trying to build the channel up. Really appreciate that. And if you listen to this video and you like it, please hit the like button. That always helps the channel out a lot. So thank you for your support. I want to talk a bit about the Undisputed title, the 4 belt Undisputed era that we seem to be in. And I think it's fair to say that this is becoming slightly more common than it previously was, because there haven't been many people who've held that, all 4 of those belts, WBO, WBA, WBC and IBF. There haven't been many people who've held all of those belts. But apart from the fact that, you know, doing that is a massive achievement, and I'm personally not someone who's that fussed about, you know, these alphabet soup belts. They don't really bother me. But yeah, I'm not denying that unifying a division is a fantastic achievement. But one thing really bugs me, and I think one thing really shows just what a mess boxing is when it comes to titles, belts and so on, because you would think that unifying a division, becoming the undisputed champion, at least in terms of belt holding, you'd think that that would be the beginning of something, that you are therefore, as George Kambosos likes to say, the emperor. You know, you rule over, and you would think that that would be the start of a long reign, unless of course you lose in the ring, you know, and then in which case someone else takes over. But oh no, boxing's never that easy, is it? It's actually kind of the end game, if you like, because holding on to those 4 belts is nigh on absolutely impossible. They get splintered. As soon as someone finally unifies, after all that time, they get splintered. And the guy or girl holding the belts finds it absolutely impossible to hold on to all 4 of them. So this seems to me to be stupidity, but then boxing is pretty good at stupidity. You would think that once someone had unified the belts, all those sanctioning bodies would say, this is our champion, what a great achievement. You know, we'll all work with each other to maintain this guy, or to maintain a unified title. Not necessarily a specific boxer, because a boxer might lose, someone else might take over. But the concept of a unified title, oh, no. That's way too sensible. That's way too, you know, grandiose a concept. No. They've got to bust the belts up, haven't they? They've got to fracture everything, because they want their sanctioning fees, and they want sanctioning fees regularly. And if you've got 4 belts, you can only make one mandatory defence at a time, and it takes, you know. Whereas if you've got an individual who only holds your belt, they can fight a lot more sanctioning fees, more money, and so on and so forth. Well, let's use Josh Taylor as a modern example of a 4 belt holder who just, it's impossible for him to maintain his 4 belts. And sure enough, the WBA, I think it was last week, stripped him. Now, leave aside the Jack Catterall controversy, because as far as I'm concerned, Jack Catterall should be the undisputed light welterweight champion of the world. And I still maintain that the Josh Taylor so-called victory over Catterall is one of the worst decisions I've ever seen in watching boxing over 40 years, well over 4 years. But anyway, Taylor has had the belts, he retained them. He got stripped by the WBA for refusing to fight their mandatory, a guy named Alberto Puello. And as a result of this, the WBA stripped him. But let's say he had honoured that mandatory and he'd fought Puello. He would have been at risk of losing at least 2 of his other belts, the IBF and the WBO, I think, because they didn't even rate Puello in their top 10 or top 12. And they would have said, no, you can't fight this guy. You know? And so Taylor says, well, I've got to. The WBA says I've got to. Well, we don't care what the WBA says. We don't view this as a proper mandatory. Then, as a result, so he fights the WBA mandatory, and the IBF strip him, or the WBO strip him. I mean, you can't spin all these plates all at once without them crashing. And I just sort of despair at this idea that after all that work of holding together 4 belts, they're just taken off you with almost disdain from ruling bodies that, again, are really only interested in the money over the prestige, over the legacy. You know, Taylor, regardless of the cattle fight, was a very fine fighter and deserves his status as the best light welterweight in the world. Again, leaving aside the cattle controversy. And then let's sort of dwell on the WBA, because if you're going to slag off ruling bodies, they're all fair game. But the WBA are particularly stupid with all their absurd sort of secondary belts. Ismael Barroso is the WBA's gold champion. I don't even know what the gold champion is. I don't know what that even means. Alberto Puello held some of their secondary titles. I can't remember which ones. Was it the international title? Was it the interim title? I think it was. When there was no need to even have an interim title. Now, keeping track of this nonsense is virtually impossible. Going back to when I was a kid, there were only 2 ruling bodies, and that was bad enough. That was the WBC and the WBA. And I think it was 81, along came the IBF. And they appointed Larry Holmes, appointed him as their champion. Holmes had the belt. That was 3 of them, where we were like, Christ, you know, that really muddies the water. And then in the 90s, the WBO came along and gradually gained some traction, especially in Britain, with Warren putting up a lot of WBO fights, having a very close relationship with them. And suddenly, now there are 4. Well, why stop there? What about the IBO? Everyone from Anthony Joshua to Hannah Rankin has been waving IBO belts around. You know, look, when you see them posing, they've got their IBO. Why shouldn't the IBO join the party? So is Josh Taylor or any other 4-belt holder really undisputed? If the IBO gains some sort of gravitas, what are we going to do? Are we going to sort of rewrite history and say, well, they weren't really undisputed, they didn't hold the IBO belt? People sometimes do that with Lennox Lewis because he never held the WBO belt. Never mind that the WBO wasn't recognised, that its heavyweight champions had included, you know, Francisco Damiani and what's the other one? I think Ray Mercer held it for a while. Was it Michael Bent, Herbie Hyde? You know, oh no, Lennox wasn't really the undisputed champion. He never had the WBO belt. Well, that's because no one cared about it. The whole concept of undisputed is very, very tenuous, I think. And that's why I sort of, when the IBF came along, I sort of put up with that. But then when the WBO came along, I sort of gave up caring. Do you know what I mean? That would have been in the 90s. And again, I'm not saying that winning all 4 of those belts isn't a tremendous achievement. It clearly is. But it seems to me, to get back to my initial point, it seems to me that when you've got those 4 belts, that should be the beginning of a true champion's journey, not the end. Those belts shouldn't be splintered again. You know, and then we get into the argument of linear champions, you know, which is very, very tenuous, because you've got to decide who the last truly undisputed champion was. Tyson Fury will say, I'm a linear champion because I beat Vladimir Klitschko. But Vladimir Klitschko definitely wasn't undisputed because his brother held the WBC title. Vladimir Klitschko never held the WBC title. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. You get to make a point. You understand what I mean? So, yeah, it's all a bit... The whole alphabet soup thing, a long, long time ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was confusing to me and give me a headache. And it still does. To me, it's who you beat. It's what your record is. It's what your it's a legacy that you build, and that we're talking a career-long legacy, not just 1 or 2 fights, not just 1 or 2 belts. People jumping up and down divisions, picking up belts, saying I'm a 4-weight world champion. It's a lot of silliness, really, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Leave them below. Thanks as always for your time. Appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Let's build the channel up. Much love to all of you. We'll speak again. Take care.